Reloading for the 6.5 Japanese or the 6.5 by 50 millimeter Arisaka cartridge. It's a pretty straightforward thing, and I know a lot of people, when I make a reloading video, they're, well, we don't see you actually pumping the press and reloading the shells. Well, this cartridge isn't that difficult to reload for. The thing is getting the proper components and dies, alright, which luckily now we have PPU makes the brass. They make loaded ammo, but it's hard to find. It used to be in the old days, back 30-40 years ago, the only brass you can get was Norma. Norma still makes it. Norma is some of the best ammunition in the world. They're one of the top manufacturers of ammunition, but it's extremely expensive. What do I mean by that? Well, all them years ago in the 70s, you could buy a Japanese rifle for $10, but it cost you 18-20 bucks for a box of Norma shells. You know, so that's why I had several 7.7 Type 99s. Had a collection of them, but I never shot them because I couldn't justify buying the ammo. And plus my reloading skills at 16, 17 years old wasn't that good, to where basically the 7.7 you can easily do out of 30-06, and a lot of people do that, reform the brass. But the 6.5 cartridge is semi-rimmed. It's kind of an unusual throwback. There's a rim, but there's an extractor groove in that. It's a little bit of an odd cartridge. You're in luck though, because it uses a standard 2.64 bullet. And basically the military load was a 140 grain bullet, or 139, which PPU also manufactures a full military jacketed bullet, FMJ, 139 grains. The only thing is it's 263 in diameter. For some reason they make their bullets just a thousandths undersized on a lot of stuff. Why, I don't know. But you could also go and find with Hornady or many of the other manufacturers a bullet that is comparable to what the service load was. And the service load used a 139 grain bullet. It traveled about 2,500 feet per second. So if you stay within those parameters, you're doing pretty good. Let's take a look. I got an original cartridge, and I'll show you one of my reloads, how they look side by side. Okay, there's the original cartridge on the left, and one of my reloads and the bullet I use. It's all PPU components. As you can see, it's pretty close. But the bullet's a little bit different in shape, so there could be some experimentation or leeway in checking it out. And also, the strange thing about Japanese ammo is there's no markings on the head of the cases. Whenever I used to find them, no matter what, I don't know if you can see it or not, there's no identifying marks on there. Okay. Alright, so for years you couldn't find components to reload. So a lot of these guns may have been fooled with, or they tried to rechamber them to make them useful. And that's what I want to go over, the problems you'll find. First I'll cover what you need to reload, and then, like a lot of people have a question or a problem, and that's what I'm going to explain to you in this video. Next thing is you need a set of dies, and dies are always available. The most inexpensive and probably the best way to go if you're just doing it is with the Lee set of dies. You get a 2-die set, the shell holder, the scoop, and some load data in there, so that's the best way to go if you want to save some cash. It's reasonable. Now the Lee dies are generally good. I haven't had a lot of trouble with them. Personally, I will stick with RCBS or Hornady, and then what's the name? Lyman. Okay, I mean, and and you can get dies. They'll cost you upwards close to $100, $70, $80. But the Lee quality is good enough to use. And they don't have the powder I'm using on the loaded air, so that's not a problem. Like I said, you use a standard 264 bullet. It's not a special one like a 268 like the Carcano. So components nowadays are no problem. Generally, you can go online to any one of the major reloading suppliers and they will have PPU ammo, or they will have the Norma brass. And you'll see the Norma brass is considerably higher priced than the PPU brass. I've not had any trouble with it. I mean, years ago, when Privy Partisan first started coming out in the market, they may have had some quality control issues on their brass dimensioning, but they are one of the few manufacturers in the world that make a lot of this not so common stuff like the Japanese rounds. I think they make the Kurtz round, the 8mm Kurtz, and I think they're the only people who make the 8mm Lebel cases and cartridges and ammo that still manufacture it anywhere. So their components are good. I've never really had any trouble with them. You know, in the beginning they weren't quite up to, you know, there was some quality issues with some of it, but they're still fairly good. They're reasonable. You shouldn't have no trouble. Now, going back to the dies, like I said, you could get a better set of dies, but I think RCBS recently here was cutting back on what they're doing, dropping stuff from their line, so a lot of things you may not be able to get. The dies may be hard to find in stock, okay? You should be able to find the Lee dies fairly easily, and if they're out, they should be in stock soon. So dies are no problems, components are no problems. Brass, I just use the standard CCI primer, nothing special, and I just reload this. Now, you may run into trouble, okay, and this is what happens to a lot of people. They send me questions. Well, I did everything, I watched your video and reloaded, and I'm doing this right. Because it's straightforward. It's just like reloading any other rifle cartridge. If you can reload a 308 30-06 or something, you can reload this, just using the same thing. Size it, trim it, anneal it if you have to, wash them, and then prime them, put powder in them, and seat the bullet down to the little groove and crimp it if you want. That's all there's to it. So people do this and then all of a sudden they got problems, like the bullet's keyholing, or I'm using the load that you used, but when I fire the rifle it's giving me a 2-3 foot group, you know. The problem with any surplus gun, especially when you're reloading for it, it's kind of like the Mosin Nagants. Someone goes, why'd you buy 20 Mosin Nagants? Well, I went through them, checked them, and some of those guns, they all look the same. When you go to the crate, they all look about the same. They're used, you know, the bore's got rifling, not too terrible. Some are counterbored. People didn't like that. And some, you know, just pulling the bolt out and looking up the barrel, it all looks the same until you start going and measuring it. Some of these guns didn't look too bad, but you could tell they were shot out. I measured it to where, you know, there was a 3,000ths difference from the muzzle down almost to the chamber. The gun must have had 80,000 rounds fired through it, you know. Where some of them you could see where they scraped the rust off, and I have one, there's pitting in the receiver area and they just scraped off all the rust and re-blued it, and it looks kind of bad. But that was the one that the rifling, the groove diameter, and the bore was almost mint or right to spec. Exactly. So the outside, the gun probably was never fired. Somebody carried it on guard duty or lugged it around, never shot the damn thing and got all beat up and rusted. But the internal part of the gun was like factory new, okay? So that's the thing, when you're dealing with surplus gun, you don't know that, okay? Like, you pull them out of the case, one of them shoots good, one of them don't shoot worth a damn, okay? You just got one that's worn out, shot up, or something's wrong with it. And the strange thing about this is I did have a set of these Lee dies for the 6.5 Carcano that really were, no matter what I did to lube and that little thin rim on the Carcano, because PPU does make the brass just like it. It's a real tiny thin rim. Well, if it got stuck in that die, it'd rip them out, and I was constantly having to pull stuck cases out of the die. I just got rid of them and got a set of Hornady dies with a shell holder from Hornady, and never had a problem. I mean, I reload 6.5 Carcano all day, never had a stuck case, nothing. So sometimes you may get a bad set of dies, but I was using this set of dies. I was going to go get a better set because I was running into problems. I had a bunch of brass that I had for years that I bought out of an estate. Some guy, it was Norma brass, and it was just a bunch of stuff I picked up, and I never really started reloading for the 6.5. So I tried running this through the dies, and I mean, that batch of brass, I had a hell of a time. My cases stuck, and it was almost impossible. Had to run up to size the brass. So I thought, like the Carcano dies, these are bad. Well, then I went and got some PPU, brand new brass, run it through there, size it, whatever, fire a few rounds, size it, not a problem. So I'm like, what's the deal? When I was sizing my brass, I noticed some of them had a bit of a bulge down in the center, and they were going in real hard where the other ones were just going through. I've heard a lot of people say with this particular cartridge and round, I know one guy that runs a gun shop, does some gunsmithing, does some custom reloading. He said, I wouldn't touch one of them with a 10-foot pole. They're the most miserable, inaccurate piece of junk that there are, a 6.5 Japanese rifle. Somebody he knew had one, they tried reloading for it, and no matter what he did, because this guy prides himself on being a custom reloader. And I mean, he took an SKS rifle and he developed a load and got it to where at 50 yards he had almost all the bullets in one hole in that, and he was using Hornady components, but he just developed a load with a certain type of powder that to make any one of those military guns with a good barrel shoot, okay? He couldn't do it with this 6.5. And what it looks like is the chamber's messed up. Now, you got to remember, when they made these guns, they're a combat gun. You fired it, they weren't reloading ammo. They weren't looking to make a sporting or competition gun. They wanted an issue gun that went off and fired. And much like the British Enfield rifles, you'll find if you try to reload for them that your brass don't last long because the chambers are deliberately larger. Okay, the guns were meant to fire under any conditions, anywhere on the globe. Okay, reliably fire, extract a round, and load another. So the chambers on a lot of the Enfield rifles are deliberately oversized. And really, they're great guns, they're accurate guns, until you start trying to reload for them and find out you get 2 or 3 shots out of your brass and they split and bust open in that. So a lot of times if you run into trouble, also the 6.5 rifles were not chrome lined like the 7.7s. And the reason the Japanese did that when they adopted the new gun, chrome lined them, is they had problems with rusting bores and the bores getting all cruddy in chambers. So you may have one example of a rifle. I have one that's kind of shot out, okay, I had about 5 or 6 different rifles, carbine and that'll fire this ammo. And I was just going through my reloading data. It must be the carbine is like the bullets were traveling 200 feet per second or less than out of the long barrel rifle. So I must have been running a chronograph on some loads with the carbine one day, which I kind of remember. It's been a long time that I did. So I got this kind of big variance, even though it's the same bullet, same case, same load. And it's another thing, and this pertains to any military surplus gun. Always approach your reloading cautiously. Start from the bottom, work your way up in case something starts getting weird, whether it's the gun, the barrel length, or you got bad load data. I did notice these cases were bulged. And another thing, these guns also were the ones where they did the 250-some Roberts conversion. Was done on the 6.5 Arisaka rifles, because surplus ammo was hard to find. So what they would do is try to rechamber it to something else they could use. So that may have been done. So I think one of my guns, I don't know if I've sold it, because I sold about 2 or 3 of them. I have to go through and see if one of them has a bad chamber or something was done to the chamber which was causing that bulge in there. It just could be worn out. And then I have another rifle that I believe, it was in service. It's got a rack number or something. There was a bunch of them imported recently. What I mean by recently is like 10 years ago or something, not 50, 60 years ago. They came somewhere out of Asia, or one of the Asian countries down there in the Pacific. Could be Malaysia, could be anywhere. And you can see where this Japanese rifle was put in. It's got a stock number painted on it, and that. It's not what the Japanese did. It was in some sort of English-speaking country where these guns could have been used for 40, 50 years in the reserves or the rural police or something, and just were used and shot out. Or if they rusted. I have a Carcano that, I've been to auctions and looked at surplus guns, and you can see this orange thick coating in there, and somebody will buy these guns and then, go pour evapor rust or some kind of chemical in there and take it out and then clean it up, buff it up, make it look decent. There's still rifling in there, but the rust, you're a couple thousandths out of spec and your bullet will fly out. So you never know until you fire the gun. Okay, so that's kind of what you have to look out for, and that's generally with any surplus gun. But yeah, I've heard people have had trouble, and I have too, but we'll go over that. Once I get some ammo made up, I'll start taking my guns out and testing it and seeing how well it works, or if we should try another bullet. But that's my advice. I'm reloading for this. I'm going to try to knock some rounds out and get out to the range here soon. Any questions, email me, and if I got some sort of answer for you, I'll get it to you.